Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the Daily Tips Show here on the Inspired Business TV channel. Today we're going to discuss, following some conversations we've been having with some senior mentees of ours, that they're having challenges around their flow, their energy. To put it not too fun a point on it, they're feeling a bit confused and lost at this period. So I'd like to bring in myself, Gary Setterfield, and my fellow co-host Sukhi Wahiwala to discuss these things, these challenges that people are having, and just see, is there a reason for it? I mean, are you feeling slightly lost at the moment? So welcome, Sukhi.
Hello, Gary.
So, Sukhi, a number of our mentees have been recently, as you know, contacting us saying that they're feeling lost. I mean, there are particular individuals, I won't name them, but for example, one of them is a senior educator. He is a coach, and he said to me he's got to rock bottom. Another one is a very influential person who is an entrepreneur, again, feeling lost. And somebody recently, their situation has changed dramatically. They've become married. And again, although they've got loads of energy, bags of get up and go, but again, they're feeling lost. And there seems to be some pattern occurring here. So I wonder if you could help us.
Gary, what a keen and absolutely focused question, because it's not a matter of you being a tough cookie. Because I know those individual mentees, and they're very, very strong and tough in mind. They work from the finance sector, property sector, all the way through to larger, basic standard retail companies. So I know this very well. So this conversation is for the Inspired Tribe. And as we all know, we deliver through this series of bite-sized kind of information, bite-sized chunks of information. So we're not going deep dive. It's only a 10, 15-minute episode to cover all the basics. Okay, so we think that we're in control. That's principally how it starts, Gary. And then what happens there is that when we believe and think we're in control of ourselves, let's just state ourselves first, what happens is that we tend to ignore the real signs of, and the small fractures within our body, within our mind in specific. Could it be the fact that we're not really understanding ourselves as well? We have had plenty of experience in this with the DISC psychometric assessments that we do in the inspireduniversity.com. You'll find a link below if you have any interest in doing the assessment for yourself. Let me share, it is enlightening, it's unlocking, it's world changing. So when an individual truly knows themselves at rest, if you understand, only then can they come back to calibrate. So I'll clarify this to yourself. If you're feeling low, down, slightly lost, it doesn't make a difference with your perception of an individual they'll be weak. That's not the case. The case is very, very clearly that there is a scientific psychometric profile of every human individual on this planet. Myself, yourself, Gary, all of us, we fit within a science, and the science is the DISC, which stands for dominant, influencer, stability, and compliant, or also known as conscientious.
Okay, Sukhi, so this thing links very nicely then into episode 7 when we were looking at the phases of lockdown where we had DISC. Could you explain each of those separately, please?
Yes, Gary, absolutely. So the first one, and the question arises that how does it relate to you, with our viewer today? Basically, we are internally a particular profile, which we call the natural profile. That's on the inside. Then there's an external profile that we put out to other people, and we show the world in essence. And that is basically what we call the adapted or the adopted profile. Now, I'll give you an example. I'll go deeper into the 4 psychometrics shortly, but I just want everybody to understand why would it help when a person feels lost. When an individual is lost, they could be me, it could be Gary, it could be anybody else here on the call. When they are lost, it's because they have lost their center. I suppose you could say they've forgotten who they are. They've gone so far away from their core beliefs, core values, that they no longer resonate with anything. So it's like being off kilt with reference to the coordinates on a map, if you understand what I mean. You don't know where you're going. So just to get clearer with this, every one of us, yourself, myself, we all have an inside our brain, which I call the unconscious brain, if I'm touching my chest right now. The inside of ourselves is the one that says to us, sit on our own, get a bit of time out, go and connect with our friends, go and communicate with all the people, go and make something for everybody to eat, that kind of stuff, or actually put it into step-by-step order. So whatever you see, do, and hear, you want to put it into a structure of some kind. So we have a natural algorithm, I suppose you could say, inside of us. This is your natural profile. This sits with you principally most of your life. Does that make sense? It's hardly ever changed. We then move into a secondary phase, which is the adapted, how we show up outside. It's a kind of like if you can remember before lockdown, it's kind of like how I am at home is different to how I am at work, if you get where I'm coming from. So this is the principle that we're talking about. If we stay in the adapted state, the work state, the I am everybody's friend state, or I've got to keep everything in order state, and it's not our natural, what we have is a conflict between these two profiles within us, one inside us and one we're portraying outside in that moment, which is the adapted state. So what happens is that if we stay in the adopted state for too long, what happens is that we ourselves run our inner reproductive energy down. We feel disconnected, disjointed, disgruntled. We remove ourselves from being effective. We lose our mojo, as some people call it. We lose our direction. And sometimes we feel as though, why am I even bothering? Does that make sense, Gary?
Totally, Sukhi, totally. So let's talk about the dominant then. How would the dominant be feeling during this period?
The dominant individual, just to give you an absolutely clear understanding of what the dominant individual would do, or the dominant profile, should we say. A dominant profile is somebody who is direct, self-orientated, rarely has a visual understanding of anybody else's world at all. So it's kind of like my way or the highway, if you understand what I'm saying. So their focus specifically is how they are going to gain or benefit from something or the action at hand. I'm sure all of you are thinking there's nothing wrong with that, because all of these profiles, whichever they are, in whichever extreme format they are all correct, because we have all an individual journey. And we'll do a separate session on the DTS just talking specifically about my version of the world, which I think is going to be a very, very important episode. Well, probably about episode 13, 14, we'll do my version of the world. The principal understanding is that we all have an independent version of the world. If I held a cup up, for example, like this one, if I say that the cup's on the handle is on the left-hand side, you may turn around and say, actually, it's on my right, because you're seeing the reflective version of my image right now. So which one of us is correct? Me, sitting here with my version on the left, or you with your version on the right? Well, the bottom line is we're both correct based upon our truth, our inner truth. So this is just a quick synopsis of Korzybski's work, which I'll talk about later in another episode, about our version of the same world that we're all in. We all have an adapted version of the world. We see our version only. So based on that, the psychometrics that we have inside ourselves is kind of like a filter. You could say like a pair of glasses, that rose tinted glasses that we can see through, and it tints everything for our own benefit. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So the dominant individual is, as I said, direct. They have a natural format to not sustain large amounts of detail. So if you're finding it hard, maybe a spouse, a child, or a boss, or somebody that's out there, a friend even, that they're very domineering, I suppose, their way. They want to lead all the time, and they want to push themselves furthest, and they have the best view. And until their view is accepted, they don't relax. It's like a fight. They always want that contention in their world. They want to ensure that they've got a scrap to get themselves completely understood and agreed with. They don't like detail. So they like to just, if they hear, the moment they've got the concept clear in their brain, bang, that's it. They don't want to interest any more conversation. They've already left. They're always looking for the head start on somebody. They want to get there first, in essence. So, in our Power Tips roundup, obviously all this will be clearly noted. So don't worry about the intake that's coming in. They also have, this individual also has kind of like a winning at all costs going on in their brain. Now, I can't go too much into the details of even more framework on this, because we have a very beautiful, what we classify as a level 5 daily, level 5 training based on this DISC foundation. If you'd like to get involved with that at all, please look at the links down there, click up or connect with us on social media in some way. And then we will then, or put it in the comment in this particular version of this video, this particular episode, sorry. And then what we'll do is we'll touch base with yourself, because we're going to be doing some virtual online trainings very shortly. So in this principle of them being dominant, they aren't an individual. They may have a natural arrogance about their own ability, about themselves. And I'm sure we all know somebody like that, even if it is ourselves. We'll go out of our way to ensure that our way is understood. Just to give you a quick touch on this, this kind of an individual tends to make really good managing directors. I'm not saying they're a popular managing director, but they're always end goal orientated, and they tend to see big picture. They don't like the detail in between, and they don't require all the steps. They're very confident that they will achieve that big picture, that location that we're going for. So does that kind of cover dominancy? And then we'll cover the other 3 as well. And then we'll apply them, if it's okay, to today's scenario with lockdown.
Yeah, perfect, Sukhi. I think there's a very clear indicator there of what somebody could be like. So let's move to the next one, and the influencer.
Amazing. So the influencer is what we classify as profile 2. And don't forget, all of us are all 4 profiles. We're not one of them. We're just in a different order. So if you can imagine a bar graph, what we're trying to achieve here is which one is my highest, which one is my lowest, and so forth, in a natural form. So an influencer is somebody who just loves freedom. They love to be the salesperson. They love to be the person who's always the center of the party, the light of the party. They love to be loved, in essence. They love to be popular. They don't like detail again. And they are individuals who start principally with a gut reaction without thinking about it or planning anything, and super optimistic. They love optimism. So just to give an example, the type of person, I'm not sure if you're listening and you're thinking this is probably about me, if you're watching this, they're the type of person who starts things and rarely finishes them. So they tend to be what we classify as the juggler, wants to look across and juggles lots of things. And their focus is around freedom and variety and creativity. They are both the dominant and the influencer. These 2 energies are both what we call extroverted energies, which once they're going to be having the hardest time in this current lockdown scenario, where they would be feeling a little suffocated being at home, which is why we've created a whole social theme every Friday on it's called the Feel Good Social Theme. If you'd like to get involved, Feel Good Friday social conversations or social calls on Zoom. So if you'd like to get involved, please put your details down and say, please contact me, and we'll then add you to the list for being invited. It's every Friday between 4 and 6. This is the extroverted energy. People who like to see people's faces, if you understand what I mean. And at the moment, they'll be feeling very drained.
Superb, thank you. Okay, so we've done 2. What about the other 2? Let's have a look at the stability.
So stability, Gary, thank you very much for bringing that in conversation. Stability is what we call a stable, logically, a very foundation dug individual. They tend to be themselves all the time. They don't tend to have this chameleon feeling about themselves. The dominant D does have a chameleon feeling. So does the I influencer. By the way, just a quick correction, the previous D and I are extroverted energies. This is when an individual goes into an external environment to recharge their batteries. Does that make sense? And the 2 that we're going to cover now, the stability and the compliant, are introverted energies, they would like to close up and go and read a book or spend some time with themselves to recharge their batteries, just to be very clear. And apologies, this is very bite-sized, so it's very quick and easy. The stability energy is very HR orientated, very caring, what we call it the very maternal, motherly love. They sadly tend to forget themselves in most of these equations, and they tend to be there for everybody else, if you understand, but if they've got a glass of water, like I have here, and somebody asked for the water, whether I'm completely parched and dehydrated myself, they would hand the water to the other person and say, I don't need it, even though they did. Let's give you an example. So they're very caring, very loving. This is not a weakness, by the way, because I believe personally, this energy is within us all, as all of them are, but this is the grounding bit that actually connects us to love for another human being. This also grounds us to our meditations. This grounds us to our affection and our connection between all of our family individuals. So a stability individual tends not to veer too far out of their comfort zone. They love to work within, if they were given a room with 15 people in the room, or actually through lockdown and the current SDP, we call it, the protocol, the social distancing protocol, that won't be the case. But let's say there's three people in a room, to make it easier, to make it more correct, that is, through this trying time. They would be very comfortable if you told them exactly what they needed to do, and they would absolutely deliver that on time, consistently. And they're the type of person who puts in the cup of coffee, the glass, the caring, the packing of the bags, and making sure your agenda's nice for the next day without you even asking. And they tend not to be noticed much in the work environment. So my heart goes out to everybody, because what you need to realize is that without this energy, this S energy, the stability energy, no community bonds. Does that make sense, Gary?
Perfectly. Now, before we come to the end of our show, Sukhi, we've got a few more minutes. Can you tell us more about the conscientious, please, as well, before we come to the power tips roundup?
Absolutely. So a conscientious, compliant, which is the C of the disc, is also introverted, as I mentioned just a moment ago. But these individuals are very strategic, very planned, very organized. They're not super optimistic. They look for evidence and data. They like hard facts. An individual who would continue to fight their case if they had the feeling that they were being undermined for their expertise and knowledge, or if they felt they were not being heard correctly, and if they felt that they were being made to be seen or deemed wrong or incorrect. Does that make sense? So they're very focused in this space, very reliable, super timely, brilliant auditors. As I mentioned with all the others, each one has their own benefits, super auditors, and they are genuine operational individuals. They really have it at hand. Now, if you remember in episode 7, was it?
Yes, it was.
In episode 7, we spoke about the phases of lockdown and the actual phases of lockdown. Please, if you do get a chance, do watch that as well, because the same disc philosophy that I'm going through right now will reference to the phases of lockdown, which I don't want to cover now, so it's there. So just to clarify and synopsize very quickly, and then what we'll do is, if you don't mind, we'll give a couple of minutes reliance or relevance to each one of these references to today and how they would be feeling, Gary. And so the dominant D, very good as a managing director, as a leading director, or a leading face. And the influencer are very much a sales-orientated social individual, very, very good for bringing customers in. The S energy, beautifully heart-centered for a HR organization, and actually creating the bond between the companies and the divisions within the organization. Trust me, if you do not have a strong HR or an S energetic feel within your organization, it will suffer within your house as well, by the way. And then we have the compliant individual, the compliant energy, which basically makes very good auditors, accounts, legal bodies, people who really understand strategy, structure, and order.
Brilliant, Sukhi. So just before we come to, as I said, the power tips roundup, could you just let me know how each of those might be feeling during this current period?
Yes, of course, Gary. And we come to the purpose of this particular episode. Hope that data was valuable. The dominant individual will go through phases of control, organizing stuff and getting stuff inside the house, overstocking. And also there'll be very much the individual who would spend a lot of time challenging status quo. They'll be out there because they need contention in their life, in the sense of somebody has to say, you cannot, and then they'll go and do it. Does that make sense? They need to have that push. So if you're finding yourself lost, it's because you're at home and you're inside. So it's about stepping up outside of this environment, and they'll try to push themselves to try and go back to work, start businesses, whatever the thought is, whatever they're being told not to do, they want to do that. So that's for the D. Now, the I energy, just to get clear, they'll be really missing the social elements, the connection, the human touch, the friendship, and the social freedoms that they would be missing. So for them, they'll be very much in the space of having an inner contention with being kind of low, lost their mojo, forgetting who they are because they've lost themselves from their process of connecting and viably there. The S energy, just to be quick about this, sorry, there's bite-sized chunks, I appreciate that. The S energy would be quite comfortable in this lockdown state, but their only contention would be is every time they'd have to leave the house because there is no current antivirus of some kind, the immunization of any kind. So that's the reason why they would be uncomfortable going out. If they did, they would make sure all of the information they require is together, and it would be like a mission. Go out, get back, change the clothes, be very detailed, and their interest is about, am I safe? Is everything safe? The compliant energy would be operationalizing everything. So to put everything in structure and strategy, they'll have a time schedule. These individuals, sadly, would feel a little bit of contention because they require a structure given to them as well as a structure given out. And they'd be relying very heavily on how the government is conducting themselves, what outlets and what advice they're giving. But really what happened is that I found with all of our internal Inspired Tribe who are very compliant, they overdo their workday. Does that make sense? So they're working from morning to evening and completely draining themselves, with VoIP, or should I say screen fatigue. So what you would need to be looking at is how can all of these four phases be aware of themselves? This is the key. It's about them being aware. So in our Power Notes write-up, you'll see this. Do I know who I am? Is what they should be looking for. Because if they are not clear about who they are, and by the way, the only way to find this out is to do an assessment. It's not a test, please remember that. It's an assessment. Use the link down below on Inspired. If you want to just go through it, it's called the Inspired university.com/DISC, DISC. It'll take you straight to the page for you to do the assessment. It takes about half an hour of your time. And this is not a pitch, it's not a sales pitch. This is very important in life for one to know myself. If I don't know me, if I don't know myself, how could I be connecting to anybody else? It's a bit like if we don't know ourselves, we don't really know the exact right angle. So if it's 90 degrees, every time we go out into the world or communicate with another human being, we adopt some of their energy, some of their thought process, some of their mannerisms, which change us in an adapted state. And if we don't calibrate back to our natural state and recalibrate this tool and go back, so we could end up with 89 degrees because it's slightly adjusted, or it could be 91 degrees. We'll carry on like this. So bit by bit, it'll actually end up becoming a big, a wider angle or a more acute angle, as the set square, for example, no longer true, not true to myself. So this is the key elements that I must go back and recalibrate myself. And the only way to calibrate yourself is to have a clear understanding scientifically with the DISC assessment, so you really know your own profile, a psychometric tooling. This is something that we specialize in, Gary, and I really, really push everybody to please do an assessment yourself. It's mind-blowing and life-changing. So during this time, I would advise any of my Inspired Tribe who have already done this particular assessment to go back to each of your reports and assess the report, read it again every single month. If you're feeling off or down or depressed or anything of that sort of nature and lost your mojo, grab the report, read the report again, recalibrate yourself, and watch your mojo, your life, your focus become very clear and optimistic and directional again. I hope that's helping.
Sukhi, absolutely fascinating. And for any of you out there who may be feeling a little bit unstable, lost, feeling as though you should be in control, but why aren't you? I hope we've covered that for you today, and we've given you some insight, albeit small, little snippets.
Could I just add in there, Gary, if anybody would like to put any questions they've got on any of our episodes into the subscription bottle, into the actual comments box, I will go back and I'll respond to each and every one of you as I can in the next, within about 4 or 5 days of you putting the post out, because we've got a lot of work that we're currently doing in the minute. So back to you for the power tip for wrap-up, Gary.
Thank you, Sukhi. Absolutely fascinating. So in episode 10, we've looked at the 4 profiles and reasons why people may be feeling the way they're feeling. So the power tips roundup, here we talked about, first of all, power tip 1, the natural profile. Then in power tip 2, we looked at the adopted profile. Natural is how we actually are. The adopted is how we may be adopting to the environment around us. And then we looked at the unconscious mind and our internal feelings. Then in power tip 3, we looked at the dominant profile, the person who has to be in control, that has the bigger picture. 4, we then looked at the versions of the world. We see things differently depending on our perspective. Then we looked at power tip 5, the influencer, the one who likes the freedom to be out there, being with people. Then we looked at power tip 6, which was the stability profile, the pairing, the carers, the people that like to look after everybody else, but actually can sometimes forget about themselves. Then we have in power tip 7, the conscientious, the strategic, must have everything planned. And then finally, we looked at power tip 8, which how do these roles actually relate to currently how people may be feeling? And remember, you're not just one, you are all of them. So you may be going through different phases, different feelings. So please, if you do, remember, follow us on Sukhi Wahiwala's official social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. Comment, subscribe to the links below. And remember, please do share with your friends and your family, because everybody will be feeling differently at this period of time. Until the next episode, have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.